Hello everyone, and welcome to round 2 of Grand Prix Valencia. I'm that damn Pipsqueak, and today I am bringing you coverage of Dr. Batman versus HerziQuerzi. Dr. Batman, we have featured before, is on a Jeskai Fireweaver mid-range deck, looking to splash 2 other colors for Remy Amber. And Herzi is on green-blue Turbofog. So Dr. Batman starting off with the turn 1 Ragavan, as you always would in a 80-card deck. On the other hand, Herzi already has a Day of the Emperor, which is one of the deck's fogs. Has a draw engine, has more fog potential. Okay, so Herzi is kind of reasonably set up already. Herzi's deck usually does best into interaction-light decks that win through combat damage. Dr. Batman's deck does win through combat damage, but also it sometimes wins through Thunder Road's kills, and overall, I would not describe it as interaction light, so I think this is probably a slight uphill battle for Herzi, but certainly not an impossible one. One of the really important things when you are playing Turbofog is you really leverage using your life total as a resource, so you need some time to get set up and get things under you. You're happy to play out some tapped lands, because the first 10 points of life don't really count. I suspect we will see Dr. Batman. Okay, so Dr. Batman missed on land. I think we'll probably see Dr. Batman tap out for Remy Amber, just based on kind of like what I know of Dr. Batman's playstyle. I think they tend to be a pretty aggressive player. Okay, so is just going to attacks, which means we're not going to see Remy played. The question is, are we going to hold up both Cosmic Sinkhole and Cursory Glance, or are we going to play Unrivaled Fireweaver? Off the cuff, I'm not super sure what Fireweaver is going to grab, so it looks like that's the line, but I'm kind of curious where this is going to go. And does still have the ability to Cosmic Sinkhole. I wonder if Herzi's going to play around it, or if Herzi's just going to jam the edge of the water. As I mentioned, Herzi does have actually a fair bit of life to work with, although obviously any burn spell that Unrivaled Fireweaver grabs does shrink that life availability a little bit. But I think in Herzi's position, I'm not feeling too bad yet, but that is a pretty definitive yet. Alright, we're seeing She-Ho's command. I think that's just +3/+0. Herzi's deck doesn't run... So Herzi's deck runs Raw Hit, but doesn't run any other, like, main legends. So that's not answering anything on board, certainly, and Herzi just won't play into it. So it's just a +3/+0? Like, discard 2, draw 2 is fine, but your hand is good right now. You don't want discard 2, draw 2. I guess Annex's Endeavor wouldn't have been that good. I probably would have gone with a Flames Approach, or maybe a Conquer Psyche. Herzi doesn't really have much in the way of kill spells, so Conquer Psyche probably would have been good. Herzi does have the ability to cycle a Promethean Grotto if needed. We also could see a Mark of the Scaleblight cast, but Herzi, as mentioned, didn't just, shove Edge of the Water into the Cosmic Sinkhole, which I think is wise. Dr. Batman is up to, assuming the Thunder Roads can be live, is up to 12 points of burn. Okay, sorry. Actually, it's only 11 points of burn because Void Flare is not currently castable as a burn spell. To use She-Ho's command, we're going to have to sacrifice treasure, which is a little bit unfortunate. I don't like grabbing She-Ho's command here. I assume we're going to cash it in now, because it's cash in now or never. But Herzi always could if they decide that taking this extra 3 points. So right now would be going to 12. If going to 9 is uncomfortable for Herzi, which I would not be shocked if that was the case, your opponent's a Thunder Road deck, then maybe we'll see it getting countered would make sense. It getting fogged would also make sense. I think you probably want to hold on to the fog. I think I would counter it. Just like, it potentially taps your opponent out, or it potentially at least, denies them some mana to Cosmic Sinkhole you here. It might open up a window, and it does... interesting. It's going to go with the fog instead. Scrying 2 is valuable in this spot. Are we going to see... So, has to Cursory Glance this and tap off of that. So, actually, that's one thing that's nice. My suggestion involved countering it, which would have been a 3-mana play, so you play into Cosmic Sinkhole. Herzi, by playing around Cosmic Sinkhole, forces Dr. Batman to have to tap out to be able to do it. So that's definitely powerful. What 2 cards are we discarding here if we're in Dr. Batman's shoes? Are we going to see maybe Cosmic Sinkhole and Void Flare? So discards the Cosmic Sinkhole and also the other Cosmic. So you're just going shields down here? This is a decision. It is pushing 7 damage. Herzi is going down to 9. But Dr. Batman doesn't have a clean way to enable Thunder Roads. This Void Flare is still 2 damage, so really only has 5 points of burn in hand. If Herzi starts chaining Fog starting now, Dr. Batman's in a really bad position. I think giving up your access to a Sinkhole there kind of stings. Did still have the basic land to play afterwards, so is still representing Sinkhole, but doesn't feel good. Draws another Day of the Emperor. We did see that Herzi attempted to scry, so that did get countered, but thankfully there was another one right on top. That missed Ragman trigger also does sting. I wonder if we will see Herzi try to get a value engine online, if Herzi will refuse to shove into the potential third Cosmic Sinkhole. I don't think I would play around the third Cosmic Sinkhole in a 80-card deck when we are this many cards deep, but possibly that would be incorrect. Herzi also has this Promethean Grotto that they need to hit their land drop, so, okay, is going to cycle it first, accepting the slight tempo hit to go up a card. Drawing another Promethean Grotto is a very funny thing here. So Herzi is still able to represent Day of the Emperor here, and also still cycle Promethean Grotto, if the situation does not demand using Day of the Emperor. Although you're down to 9 life, it's possible that you just need to fog every attack from here on out because your opponent runs burn. Your opponent being up to 3 Ragavans drawn in their top 13-ish cards, definitely a little bit unfortunate for them. But swings and roundabouts. Also doesn't have the second red or white mana. And this fog does mean the Ragavan doesn't get to generate another token. So Herzi is actually doing meaningful mana denial with this Day of the Emperor, which is deeply funny. Gets to bottom 2 cards, so that's, pretty good value. And yeah, can't play out Ragavan, can't play out Remy, can't play out Thunder Road. Could play out Void Flare, but it's 2 damage, and you're at minimum 2 land drops away from having it be 3 damage. Wow, is just going to throw it as 2 points. I guess you just want to use your mana efficiently, but feels pretty bad. Yeah, there's no real point to doing it then versus when Herzi has untapped for turn. So Herzi is not going to cycle, just plays out the Promethean Grotto. If she casts Edge of the Water, we can't currently cast any follow-up spell to that. So we might be on plan just hold Unraveling instead. Mark of the Scaleblade is awkward, although Herzi doesn't know this, because turning the Ragavan into a 3/2 does unlock more Ragavans from hand. Okay, is going to play out the Rahit. So Rahit Arcane Tutor is kind of like the original Jace, if people are familiar with Jace Beleren. So plussing him, you get to look at the top 3 cards of each player's library and put one of them into each player's hand, basically. So you draw the best of the top 3 cards, your opponent draws the worst. And then also, when you use the 0, you get to play cards exiled by him, or one of the cards exiled by him, which is pretty good. Speak No Evil is a great pickup here. I think if you're in Herzi's spot, you give your opponent the Remy Amber. Their mana isn't good to cast it yet, and you're hoping to not let them ever deal combat damage again. But maybe you also just give them the Anthus's Accomplice. I feel a little bit bad about doing that. I definitely wouldn't want to give them the secrets. Okay, he's going to give Batman Remy, as I predicted, and Herzi is going to get both Promethean Grotto and... so Promethean Grotto being exiled is a little bit awkward because you'd rather that be in your hand. You can't cycle it from under Rahit. But having that Unraveling is very nice because you have an Unraveling in hand and are looking to cast it. But yeah, this Speak No Evil is very good for Herzi. Batman really needs to draw into another land. Are we going to see it happen? Yes, okay. So this mountain's huge. It unlocks Thunder Roads. It unlocks Remy Amber. I think if I'm in Dr. Batman's shoes, so there's a Speak No Evil heads up. So if you cast Remy Amber, your opponent is just going to fog it. But it also forces them to fog it. Whereas, well, no, if you attack your opponent and they don't fog it, then you Thunder Road them. So never mind. It is correct to just attack and hope your opponent makes the mistake. Better to make them think that they're not dead and then kill them. But also, if you're Herzi, you're aware of the fact your opponent didn't play out a Remy Amber. So, yeah, you're just not going to take the damage. I wonder if we'll see Dr. Batman get impatient and just throw the Thunder Road at face. I assume not, but I think it's kind of in line with how they decide to play that Void Flare, and maybe they consider the fact that Herzi is tapped off of counter magic to be a good reason to slam Remy. Both those options make sense. Alright, and it looks like we're doing a post-combat cast of Remy Amber. It's a little bit curious. So, Herzi drawing a Prismatic Cavern is good card advantage with the Promethean Grotto. Raw Hit is good card selection, so if there's a single... Yeah. So, unfortunately, there was not a single Fog in Herzi's top cards. Those are not cards you want to give your opponent if you're Herzi. I think you give them the Magmatic Torrent and just say, whatever, they've already hit their mana troubles are behind them. They can go ahead and take the land. Because you definitely can't give them the Cursory Glance if your goal is to fog for this turn with Unraveling, and the Scorch is, puts you closer and closer to death. Herzi using this to hit a land drop is kind of nice. Is not looking to play the Prismatic Cavern, so wants to spend their mana fully this turn. I assume we'll see a Edge of the Water into Unraveling on your opponent's turn to, slow their roll. This is going to be one of the last turns that Unraveling does successfully shrink your opponent's entire board if Remy is close to flipping. Because once Remy flips, you get to repeatedly crystallize, which can quickly grow your creatures out of -4, -0 range. Okay, so we're not casting Edge of the Water. Interesting. I assume this is some combination of we're going to cast Mark of the Scale Blight as a board wipe / fog, and then be able to fight over it with the Unraveling. I do think Dr. Batman's mana base is causing some very minor issues here. So we remarked on in the last commentary, Dr. Batman's only ways of producing black and green to flip Remy are off of treasure tokens and off of Nebula of Empty Gold. I think an off-color tri-land of some sort would be huge, so you just run the Jund tri-land. No, probably not the Jund tri-land because you need to both produce black and green. Okay. Herzi has pointed out that Dr. Batman forgot to lose life off the Magmatic Torrent. I assume we will see Herzi reiterate that with a line from the Magmatic Torrent to Dr. Batman's face, perhaps, or just restate life. One of the two is possibly going to happen. Okay. Yeah, just restates it. Herzi's win con does not really involve draining your opponent out, but, happens. So we are just going to shrink with the Unraveling. This is interesting to me. So we just want to play around Cosmic Sinkhole, is the explanation. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. And then Raw Hit is... Okay, so Raw Hit 0 does work until your next turn. So the next Raw Hit tick can be used to be able to cast Unraveling. And then the next Unraveling will be both Shrink and Scry 2 and Draw to kind of move you steadily more towards your endgame. So Dr. Batman thinking here is mostly just to make Herzi think they have something. But the only thing that they actually can cast in this spot is Thunder Road, which would be kind of insane to cast. So, yeah. But I feel like it's a little bit of an empty bluff. Just because if you could counter your opponent's thing, you would push 7 damage and counter their thing. So I don't know if I would buy it if I was Herzi. I would probably assume there's just a question of, do I burn spell now? And again, there's no real reason to burn spell now rather than any other time. But yeah, we're going to see a delay here. So here's the thing. Dr. Batman's deck runs actually quite a few ways of enabling Thunder Road. It runs Ominous Discovery, it runs Ready for Anything, it runs plenty of a blue and one other mana counter magic. You do need the green-black sources still, as I've remarked upon. It's really unfortunate that Ragavan is no longer capable of printing money. Tranquil Repose is so good here. Jeez. Yeah, the thing that seems likely is that in Dr. Batman's shoes, I think you're meant to just kind of hold out, keep throwing lethal every turn, and try to get to a position where you can generate treasures such that you can, get lethal off of a Thunder Road burn spell. Your opponent is at 7 life. You also have them dead to, the Flames Awaken basically kills them. So another Fireweaver mostly doesn't. We're just going to see an end of turn Thunder Road. Where does this get us? So 7 life versus 4 life. This is just the equivalent of, shaving a burn spell off the clock. Yeah, I don't get the logic there. I don't want to say that there isn't logic, because I do not know Dr. Batman's deck as well as they do, but I don't see how we would come to the conclusion of that being the correct line. Okay, nope, sorry, that's just the Jeskai Triland. See, this land doesn't make sense to me, because at the point where you're fetching a Triland, it should probably just be one that helps you fix off colors. This deck seems to be good in terms of hitting its color thresholds for the most part without that, so draws a Sedate Tundra. In spots like this, it can feel really, bad to be drawing so many lands. I don't think this is as much a question of drawing so many lands as it is a question of drawing so many legends. The fact that there's a backup Remy and 2 backup Ragavans really sucks here. It really limits the number of cards that Dr. Batman has drawn this game. But we also saw Dr. Batman bin these Cosmic Sinkholes, which would have been, important and huge in this matchup. So, I'm not super sympathetic to the feels bad of some of the dead draws here. So, Herzi does get the Scry 2 and draw on, has the Tranquil Repose in hand, which will, once again, delay Dr. Batman's lethal by a turn, and draws a card. So, Herzi's actually up to 2 more, I wonder if Herzi is just playing around a 4th, or a 3rd or 4th Cosmic Sinkhole, whatever it is, partially because Dr. Batman ditched 2. But I also can't remember if Herzi tapped out at any point for a life-saving play that, Herzi is probably confident that Dr. Batman doesn't suddenly have a Cosmic Sinkhole. It's possible Herzi still will want to play around it for as long as possible, especially if there's not a meaningful cost to playing around it, but if I was Herzi, I'd be feeling pretty comfortable. Your opponent hits 2 lands, and Ready for Anything. Man, you are so happy to give them an island here and take a Tranquil Repose. Honestly, this is actually getting to the point where, as Dr. Batman, I would legitimately consider scooping. Just, your opponent, for a fact, they have at least 1 fog in hand. You know that they have, they're up to 9 cards in hand. They have your cantrips. You're drawing nothing but lands. I mean, it is worth still playing to your outs. If your opponent doesn't have any counter magic or any life gain, then it is possible for you to, draw into 2 more burn spells, but you need to draw 2 more burn spells, which just feels pretty bad. Oh, and Herzi gets to discard Small Luxuries, which feels awesome, So Small Luxuries, for those not familiar, is a Herzi card, actually, that is just, the most little incremental value engine in a really unobtrusive way. So, when you mill it or discard it, it recurs to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So, this functionally means, A, it doesn't count towards maximum hand size, and B, anytime you have a looting effect, such as Edge of the Water, it becomes, +1 card. Because instead of drawing a card and discarding card, the card you're discarding comes back to you. Speak No Evil is also huge here because, as mentioned, one of the ways Herzi dies is to a Fireweaver or a Thunder Road augmented. And the fact that Speak No Evil can just turn those off is kind of huge. Herzi being at 7 cards in hand does make me question, do you Tranquil Repose here? Do you want to draw the card? Probably, since we just established the upside that you have for holding Speak No Evil. This time swinging them all at Rahit's kind of clever. I wonder if you're just trying to, like, basically ask Herzi, do you want to skip drawing... Do you want to skip casting a Fog this turn in order to keep your card draw engine online? But ultimately, that's still just, like, it's asking Herzi a question. Whereas if you swung for 4 at Herzi's face, you would just guarantee get lethal, so it would force the Fog. I think that's one of those spots where giving your opponent the ability to make a choice is just always worse than, like, denying them the ability to make a choice. And you knew they had that Tranquil Repose, so you're not even up information. So Herzi has 3 more Fogs. I can't remember what Herzi's endgame / win con is. Let me double check. Is it literally just decking your opponent? Oh no, thank God. There's an Icon's Portal, which is a Laboratory Maniac, like, okay. If it was genuinely a, I need to wait and cycle cards from my deck so I never deck out and then run you out of cards, and Dr. Batman had 53 cards left, I think I would have immediately decided then and there to stop casting the rest of this match. Okay, now Raw Hit is... Herzi has enough counterspells in hand, or has enough Fogs in hand, that Raw Hit can now just represent counter magic, which is huge. Feels very strong, because, like, the other cards here, you don't care about them. Like, they're fine, but you need to make your land drop still. Are we going to see Edge of the Water finally? Yeah, okay. So, Herzi is now accelerating us towards the end game. Small Luxuries is going to be the card discard to Edge of the Water every single turn. So Edge of the Water means that Herzi is going to draw 2 cards each turn at minimum. And then we could potentially see Raw Hit accelerate that process. If Herzi casts Tranquil Repose this turn, which probably will happen, we get to also protect that with Cursory Glance. This Renewal Grove would put Herzi to 10 cards in Graveyard, which means you start getting the discount from Edge of the Water. So Dr. Batman draws another land. And playing against the Fog deck kind of blows because it's so hard to know when you're dead. But unfortunately for Dr. Batman, they are functionally dead. We've talked a bit about the draws that can get them out of this, but those draws are now being put into checkmate by the Cursory Glance and the Speak No Evils and so on and so forth. This is also one of those decks that, if it was a paper tournament, you would win a lot of matches by going 1-0-1. And I think also people would scoop to you more easily. But in MSEM, we have untimed rounds, so it's just a question of how long both you and your opponent are around to play it out. Renewal Grove gets us to 10 cards in library, 10 cards in graveyard, as mentioned. We also still have a Promethean Grotto in there. Herzi has so much value. Oodles and oodles and oodles. Tranquil Repose will draw 2 cards, discard a Small Luxuries. As mentioned, like, I think the attacking Raw Hit doesn't really make sense here. You're not going to gotcha your opponent, you're still giving them the choice. But I really also don't want to come across as, like, criticizing Dr. Batman's play here. We are operating with just way more information than she has access to. And that's, that's kind of an unfair standard to hold up. But I also, on the other hand, think that Dr. Batman is functionally dead here, so it's kind of hard to continue providing too much in the way of color commentary or, like, back and forth discussion when, ultimately it has come down to this. Scramble the Scouts is another one of our Fogs. It prevents all damage that be dealt by creatures this turn, so that one also covers the Flames Awaken attack trigger, which I don't think is relevant, but is a technically true statement. Raw Hit 0 to represent Cursory Glance again. We've seen this one before. I presume we'll play a Swamp out of hand to get, just under the maximum hand size. Our Mysterious Cataract also works. That allows you to thin your deck a little bit faster. You can reasonably guess that 3 of your opponent's cards are actually useless. If I was Herzi, I would, by this point, be guessing, oh, there's, like, Legends in your opponent's hand. So Luxury goes to hands, you discard 2 more Luxuries, go to your opponent's turn. Good lord. So, okay. If Herzi pushes towards the end game, Herzi draws... Herzi is winning in at least... At most, like, 10-ish turns from now. We will see our Herzi victory. But Dr. Batman keeps pausing on upkeep. I'm curious if this is a, like, I don't know if I should fetch angle, or if there is a thing that we're bluffing, or if this is just a, like, dealer, please one time give me a card. So, Lost Through Dreams. I think if you're Dr. Batman, you assume your opponent has... Well, you know there's a Cursory Glance on table. But maybe you just fight through that. You know, you attack your opponent's face. You thread until Lost Through Dreams, whatever their fog is, they have to counterspell back. And you are kind of back to square one, but at least you've worked your way through one of the face-up counterspells. And yeah, everything's going at face. This Lost Through Dreams is good enough for us to try to force. At the very least, it doesn't cost you meaningfully anything to do this. Wait, we're not... Okay. We are not going to Lost Through Dreams to try to fight through the Cursory Glance. Maybe we are just hoping that our opponent, you know, taps off the Cursory Glance. But I do think there's actually, like, kind of a tell that just happened here, which is Dr. Batman changed the strategy that she was using of who/what she was attacking. So if I was Herzi, I would say, oh, something changed about your hand state. But we'll see how that goes. Deck thinning, as mentioned. Herzi also has enough mana. Oh god. Okay, so Studies Past. Studies Past is a lot like Season Past. It's the card that means that Herzi can't deck out. It also means that Herzi can recur. So different mana values. So you can get a land back, and then 1, 2, 3 fogs back. Dear Lord. It's mana values, not mana costs, right? Okay. So if Herzi ever needs to or wants to immediately draw 3 more fogs, that is an option that she has. I do think that you're actually at high enough fog density in hand that I would probably start plussing Rahit. I understand that you want to continue holding your lock as long as possible, but you have the mana advantage to start to move towards the end game, and I think that +1ing to potentially draw your Icon's Portal would spare yourself and us a lot of time. It is interesting also to think back about the She-Hose command, because if that She-Hose command had instead been the Flames Awaken, Dr. Batman would have had 2 more, Cosmic Sinkholes in hand to utilize in Counter Wars, and B, we would have, mementoed that thing by now, and it would have been able to swing and be dealing Herzi 3 damage a turn if it was able to successfully attack. Now, Herzi had an Isolated, so doesn't super matter one way or the other, but interesting to recur a Promethean Grotto rather than to recur a Scramble of Scouts. I wonder what that means. Oh, I assume that's just, no, okay, I was gonna say Herzi. Okay, so this actually does let Herzi take extra advantage of the small luxuries. No, it doesn't. Yep, I'm not sure about why the Promethean Grotto in hand versus the Scrambled Scouts. But I also really think it's elementary. We are currently quibbling over whether they should have done 3 layers of paint on the wall or 4. And the truth is, we are still just watching paint dry. It doesn't matter how much paint. Okay, so now we crack the fetch lands. I feel like there is something being done with intent here, and I don't understand what the intent is. But we'll play it out, I suppose. Yeah, fetching an Ares Pillar during your upkeep instead of your opponent's end step is a misplay that Dr. Batman has made twice now this GP. And assuming that she continues in the GP or plays the deck after this GP, I think that's one thing that could be taken away successfully. Nebula of Empty Gold's a fine pickup, but here's the issue. You know your opponent has at least 1 Speak No Evil in hand. I think you know that there's 2. And if you activate Remy's ability and it gets countered, Remy just never comes back. Remy is gone for good. This is the reason why Remy exiles as part of an activation, the cost, is to stop your opponents from blowing you out with removal, but it does mean you get blown out by Stifles, and also I suppose one Nebula does not get you all of the way to being able to transform Remy. I will admit I do struggle to respect like the 30-second-ish tank on what am I naming with this Nebula. I think it is very likely that one or more of these players are spending a lot of brain power on things that don't really matter. And that's one thing that, if you look to improve at Magic, that I would generally advise is figure out what matters and try not to spend brain power on things that don't matter. Like, it sounds incredibly cliche, but it's just kind of true. It is very easy to trick yourself into next leveling, and it is very easy to play a long match and not realize that the reason that you're insanely fatigued by the end of the match is because you've spent a bunch of brain power doing things you don't need to do. So we are going to have small luxuries triggers. Are we going to now are we going to activate the grotto again? No. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why we recurred the grotto. I'm certain there's a reason. I don't understand the reason. Another study's passed in hand. I also feel like when Herzi was using studies past to regrow Speak No Evil, I feel like you should have recurred a Tranquil Repose. That way you are, again, drawing faster to an end game. We're at a 42-minute game 1 so far. I don't have a sense that the post-board games will be faster, but it'd be nice to imagine. Alright, so we're casting this X equals 3. Does it have to be... No? Okay. So it doesn't have to go up the curve. So we're redrawing another Unraveling, Speak No Evil, putting Mysterious Cataracts into play. So shuffling off the fetch does mean we could redraw the studies, which is good. I can't remember how many of these... So Dr. Batman knows about 1 Unraveling, 2 Unraveling, Speak No Evil, and can guess based on the fact that Herzi is through all but 22 cards in the library. And you can see most of those cards. You can reasonably guess that Herzi has at least 3 more fogs in hand. I don't know the out that you're playing to. Discard the small luxuries, and we need to discard at least 2 more cards. Good lord. Discarding one of the Speak No Evils, which you're in a good spot, and discards the Mark of the Scale Blight. So doesn't discard this Promethean Grotto. So the purpose I thought that the Promethean Grotto was serving is cycling it on your opponent's turn, and then when you draw a card, you also get to proc the small luxuries on your opponent's turn in addition to on your turn. So it technically increases the amount of value you're getting by a marginal amount, but Herzi then didn't do that, so I don't know where we're at. So Dr. Batman could Ready for Anything here. One thing that's cool about Ready for Anything is it potentially baits your opponent into unraveling it. I don't think that's what's going to happen though. Yeah, Herzi just lets it through. Ready for Anything does now mean... No, I was going to say that you have Augmented, but you don't have the 5th color to have Augmented. So we're bottoming a Shrine, and we're putting it on Rifled, Fireweaver on top, and drawing it. Okay, that makes sense. Now, how are we going to resolve this Fireweaver? If we cast it, we know our opponent has... Or we can reasonably guess our opponent has a Speak No Evil to counter the triggered ability. We know they have 2 Unravelings to counter the spell itself. You have Lost Through Dreams to fire back on, but if your opponent does just counter -1, -4, -0, okay, is responding to the ETB with a Speak No Evil instead. But even though the Speak No Evil is technically not known information, with known information, you know that this Fireweaver is not doing anything. And this is one of the best draws in your deck, to be clear. It just also is one of the best draws in your deck, and it doesn't do anything, which I think should kind of send the message home about the state of the game. But Dr. Batman's yep, that's fine, that resolves. Please don't tap your creature sideways. Please, God. You don't have any other legal plays. You know you don't have any other legal plays. Your opponent knows you don't have any other legal plays. I guess you could technically crack the clue, but that's not going to do anything. I think... No. Oh my god. Yep. Okay. Small luxuries to hand. Are we going to see the Grotto cycle? Nope. Yep, I have no idea what that Promethean Grotto is doing here. I am certain there is a purpose to that, but I have no idea what it is. Mysterious Cataracts, if nothing else, is nice for the reshuffle purposes, because you had to bottom those studies past. But also, the deck thinning isn't bad. On-Zen means these Promethean Grottos tap for blue mana. There is part of me that actually thinks that if I was in Herzi's position, I would be tempted to just reveal my hand and say, "You are dead. Please concede." That is very much the type of player I am, and is very much not the type of player Herzi is. But you know, I think there is a world in which that is the highest EV play. Okay, so we're gonna raw hit. If you give your opponent the Nebula, they will exile their Remy for you. I think that's better than giving them the Scorch or the Ominous Discovery, which have the potential to go poorly. You either grab the Studies Past or the Unraveling. I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know, as stated, I think Herzi could basically just take game actions from here at random and win the game. But Herzi is still acting. Herzi is still taking deliberate choices and deliberate game actions. Raw hit next turn could also draw Herzi 8 cards. So when combined with the 2 cards that we draw off of the 2 cards that we draw for turn, plus those 8 cards, our deck has 6 cards left in it. If we hit an Icon, we can reasonably go to, I guess maybe that's a purpose for Promethean Grotto, is it's another cantrip to win off of Icon with. But yeah, we are about ready to be at the point where Herzi can play, flip Icon, and win the game. And I don't think there's any main deck things that kill an Icon. And yeah, there's nothing that kills an Icon in Dr. Batman's deck at instant speed. So you just, if it resolves, you win the game. Crack Clue, okay, draws Thunder Roads. Between that and Nebula, there's a Hope Spot, but Dr. Batman's hand cannot currently enable Augmented. So I think instead what we're going to see is we're going to see a Nebula attempt to flip Remy. That gets cancelled, or that gets stifled. Play another Remy, pass the turn. Cursory Glance feels very exciting. You now have 2 counterspells. You know your opponent has 3 Unravelings, and the mana to cast all of them. Your opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mana, plus Edge of the Water discounting all of that. So your opponent can cast 3 Unravelings, and also, like, I don't know, 6 more Fogs after that. Okay, is smart and attacks first. So if you you can potentially get your opponent to both have to spend 1 fog and then also quote unquote spend another fog with Speak No Evil, is going to be pressing for lethal. Okay, so this is why. So we're going to see a no, this doesn't make any sense. Cursory Glance to enable Augmented makes sense. Lost Through Dreams does now create a Fatigue, which I'm sure Herzi will catch. If Herzi doesn't, I will. Yep, Herzi catches. Yeah, no, your creatures are not getting through. I do not know what to tell you. So now we do Speak No Evil, prevent all combat damage, and like, you can feel like, oh, look, I'm trading through resources. But your opponent has a raw hit in play with a Studies Past under it. You know there's 3 more Unravelings here. What's going on? Wait, we floated green mana, but we're not spending green... Wait, what's the floating green mana about? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that just showing that we have spent green mana this turn? Okay, just marking that green was spent. So, oh wait, I think Herzi probably should not be doing Speak No Evil here, because you want to have this to answer the Thunder Roads. I mean, it's not an issue. You literally counter it 3 times with these Unravelings, but I think you probably do the -4, -0. And get to hold your answer. But again, for Dr. Batman, this is a little bit awkward because this feels very good, but your opponent is forced to act, and you know they have 3 Unravelings to counter this. So it is a very false victory that you, on paper, should know is a false victory. Meanwhile, on Herzi's end, you're probably second-guessing a non-zero amount to like, oh god, is my opponent potentially... Wait, we're cycling Promethean Grotto. Why are we cycling Promethean Grotto instead of Unravelings? Okay, has the Icon's Portal in hand. Is going to discard one of the Unravelings, so each of them goes up on cards, and potentially die to any Scorch afterwards? No, discards the Promethean Grotto. No, discards the Scramble Discounts. Counter first one, counter another one, counter a third one. If your opponent has two Cosmic Sinkholes, you die. What? My point A, which one? It doesn't matter. Oh my god. This is farcical. This is before the augment resolves for reference. So that takes... What does that matter? Yeah, it doesn't matter at this point. Because you don't have a Speak No Evil you are drawing towards, right? Yeah, this is the fourth one. Okay, and then you cast the next one. Herzi, notably, this onset means that Herzi has the ability to cast all three Unravelings. I hope Herzi hasn't forgotten that. We'll presumably see a Scry 2 draw here, and then another Scry 2 draw. And each of these draws 2, and then discards 1. Icon Portal will be lethal next turn. So we just need to navigate our way through this turn, and then we'll be on to the post-board games. Discards a raw hit. If you don't try to counter this as Herzi, so you did just leave yourself potentially dead to your opponent having Scorch plus Cosmic Sinkhole in hand. I guess you're dead either way to Scorch plus Cosmic Sinkhole. But Herzi did play that that turn kind of questionably. Again, it doesn't really matter because of how much advantage Herzi accrued, but this is kind of the quote-unquote, this is the downside of using up a bunch of brain power, is in spots like this where you would really like to have access to that brain power, you just don't. You have run out of the ability to make those decisions. Discards the Vantage Point instead of the Small Luxuries. Icon's Portal. Your opponent does not have any counter magic here. If they did, they would have killed you. So, since you are not dead, this Icon's Portal will resolve. Look at the top 5. Mill. Would this Vantage Point have been lethal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, Herzi had enough mana to Icon's Portal, resolve it, go down to 5 cards in the library, flip Icon's Portal, Vantage Point. Well, that doesn't. Raw hit plus Vantage Point win. Are we going to see a raw hit plus? Most of the cards in your opponent's deck don't matter anymore. You would like your deck to be empty of cards. You know this Icon can't be killed. Playing another Edge of the Water. Each of these discounts your spells by 1 more, but I don't know what purpose that serves. I guess, okay, so you need to play out all 3 Edge of the Waters, then raw hit. You go down to 3 cards left in library. You flip Icon, you cycle, you win the game. Or you might not... No, you don't even need the 3rd Edge of the Water. Okay. Herzi is doing the thing that ends with the game ending. Oh, yeah, raw hit -7. Also works. We are free. Yeah, sending raw hit to the graveyard and unattaching. Okay, so that was a 1 hour long game 1. Definitely glad for Jump Cutter removing a bunch of time here. Hopefully the YouTube video for this portion is closer to 40 minutes rather than an hour. Maybe it'll even be less. Hope springs eternal. So, as mentioned before, Dr. Batman's sideboard doesn't give you a lot of things to board in, mostly because you are a Fireweaver deck. Sigil Radiance is pretty defensible in this matchup. It technically stops Promethean Grotto, it stops Studies Past, but I wouldn't say those are like key aspects of your opponent's deck. I think it's worth doing if there are specific cards in your deck that you don't want, but I also don't know what those would be. Admonish, I think, is pretty good because being able to answer the Edge of the Waters or potentially blow up the Icon's Portal is like a reasonable and exciting game plan. Over on Herzi's side of things, you probably just board in the 4 Secrets of Corelight Court, which, insulate you versus counter magic. I don't think I'm particularly excited by Privilege's Sway. Your opponent runs non-creature spells, but they're not ones you worry about. Stand Unassailable is probably the one I would be most excited for. You need Life Gain to beat your opponent's burn spells. So we're getting into game. Herzi did board in stand unassailable as called. Both players mulligan down to 6, which I think slightly favors Dr. Batman. Herzi's deck is kind of a density based deck, so every card it doesn't have to work with is a real loss, which is why the little edges it gets with Promethean Grotto, cycling, then playing from the graveyard, then picking up with Prismatic Cavern, then cycling it again. Like, it needs those little extra bits of card flow, as well as things like the small luxuries loops. So Dr. Batman's on the play. We're just going to see probably an island to go, if I had to guess, represent Cosmic Sinkhole starting turn 1. Then you can play out the Heartforged Savant freely on turn 2 because your opponent doesn't really play things that kill it, unlike in a lot of matchups. So you can just, shock and Ocean Monastery, go to town. And then your hope is that this Heartforged Savant grows big enough and pressures Herzi's life total quickly enough that your opponent dies before they can get all of their engines together. Meanwhile, on Herzi's side of things, we might see turn 2 tap out for stand unassailable, or we might see just cycling the Secrets of the Core Light Court and getting it set up. We could also see a cycling the Promethean Grotto to start. I think cycling Promethean Grotto or stand unassailable are the things I'm highest on. Just being mana efficient is really good. Herzi asking the real questions about where the turn 1 Ragavan was. When your player gets the the Fireweaver deck and they don't have turn 1 Ragavan, something's gone wrong. Oh yeah, you demanded a break. See, Dr. Batman also with very good answers. I agree with Herzi's decision of draw before fetching. You do actually want to hit all of your land drops right now. Given that you're at 20 life, I probably wouldn't cast the stand unassailable yet. I think I would, just hold up for Promethean Grotto, and having the ability to speak no evil if the circumstance, really demands it is nice. Although, yeah, I mean, I guess if you're Promethean Grottoing, there's no punish here. I was going to say you don't want to let your opponent untap into counter magic, but they can't really counter you in any way that matters. I wonder if you're meant to ready for anything first there, technically, but probably doesn't matter. Probably just need list quibbling. Black, green, white goes down to 15. Seems like a solid life total to be at. Ping. Yeah. Are we going to see a mid-combat ready for anything? No. Why not? Are we just hoping to hold up Cosmic Sinkhole? Yep, I disagree with this play from Dr. Batman. Cast the ready for anything pre-combat, get the extra 1 damage in. Maybe you're drawn to something that changes your mind of how you want to play this turn. But the difference between Cosmic Sinkhole, X equals, 0 versus 1 is pretty minimal versus your opponent's deck. Technically, Dr. Batman could counter, if Herzi taps out or taps 2 for a stand unassailable, maybe you get to counter it with a Cosmic Sinkhole and you feel great. I don't think you should feel great in that circumstance. And if Herzi slams Raw hit, Cosmic Sinkhole X equals 1 would have done the same thing here, and is going to do the same thing here. And yeah, you can ready for anything now, but it means that you're missing 1 damage. So if Herzi stabilizes again at 1 life, it's not even just a question of 1 life, because it's 1, it is a question of 1 life, because Dr. Batman just cast the ready for anything now, so it doesn't permanently lose out on that damage, but it's not a snowballing disadvantage, unlike sometimes the mistakes you make can do that. But this is a pointless 1 damage to have missed. Just because a spell is an instant does not mean you have to cast on your opponent's end step. I think from here you want to accelerate the clock, so you want either more threats or you want more instants and sorceries that you can kind of chain with Heartforged Savant. Dr. Batman gets a clue. That is a game rule violation. I'm not sure off the cuff if I should intervene or not. Yeah, I'm going to choose to not intervene. If the players call for a judge, I will happily intervene. But MSEM is run at a comp REL sort of environment, but there's a little bit of logistics with the fact that sometimes people who are doing commentary are also judges, or need to be careful with how they potentially involve themselves in the game. But definitely being down a card is a real huge miss here off ready for anything. You do not play that card as an instant speed period. Yep. Dr. Batman realizes it, so I did not need to agonize over this for quite as long as I did. So in a spot like this, I would generally just call a judge. I would ask what we do, and the answer usually ends up being, this is a GRV, please don't do that again. Sometimes you make the clue, sometimes you don't. Your opponent gets a failure to maintain game state, but they're just choosing to play on, which ultimately, if players come to a resolution they're satisfied with, that's something we are okay with allowing. So stand unassailable, no answer. We're going to gain 7 more life up to 23. Prismatic Cavern, pick up Promethean Grotto, continue to generate card advantage, mana advantage. I don't know. I feel like I've seen this game before. Herzi has another stand unassailable in hand, so is at a virtual 30 life, has 2 Tranquil Reposes already lined up. Dr. Batman also, again, choosing to not cast Void Flare, so that's the second point of damage that we are missing right now. So Herzi could be at a virtual 21, which doesn't matter this game. It definitely feels like this is a case where, he's going to grab the grow the Ragavan. Interesting. So it's kind of going, what's the benefit to going wide here? Herzi doesn't have single target removal. Yeah, I'm not sure about that decision. I mean, it's ephemeral, but I think that's the way you defend. Like, I didn't want to cast on my turn because the counter was going to go on a Ragavan, which couldn't attack. But I think the question is, what's the advantage there? And even this Thunder Road, like, Herzi has the Speak No Evil in hand, can just gain more life off more stand unassailables. Like, you should feel good beating your opponent down to 14 life. You have 6 power on board. You have 9 more points of burn in hand. Like, that's good. But your opponent, it has 4 mana. They're going to hit 5 mana on their turn if they choose to just play out the Promethean Grotto rather than cycle it. And they can just gain life, hold up counter magic / fogs. Yeah, we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4 fogs in Herzi's hand. Stand unassailable in hand, stand unassailable in graveyard. I feel like I've seen how the rest of this game is going to play out. We're just jamming the Edge of the Water. We're assuming your opponent doesn't have counter magic. We appear to be correct. Edge of the Water is some nice card draw here. And we currently have access to Speak No Evil. Okay, cool. We're a little bit off from the discard right now, 6 mana-ish. The Admonish is a nice draw. As mentioned, boarding those in is good. I hope Dr. Batman just pulls the trigger on that now. Like, cast that before combat, get your extra counter. You don't need to wait for the last minute. You definitely don't want to wait for your opponent to untap into 3 mana so they have access to Unraveling. You also could attack, and if your opponent fogs, you counter it, and you push 7 more damage. Because Admonish is a force spike. Okay, so we are going to see that happen. So, down to 7 life. Herzi goes back up to 14 off the stand unassailable. Thunder Road is, unfortunately, not particularly close to being augmented. Well, actually, you do get to make a treasure off Ragavan if you don't miss that. Okay, that's unfortunate, because you did need that second blue-black source. But also the fact that you admonished to push damage, which I think was a reasonable call, does mean that this Edge of the Water is going to stick around and start generating Herzi card selection, and we're not that far from it generating mana advantage. Choosing what to bin is interesting for Herzi here. I think I'm pretty tempted to bin an Unraveling just to make the second Unraveling better, but I think that could also be inordinately greedy, and the correct move is to bin a Secrets of Correlate Court. I definitely don't want to bin the Stand or the Tranquil or the Scramble the Scouts, so we are going to see Secrets get binned. The next question for me is, do we just cast Stand Unassailable here, which appears to be yes, and I agree with that decision. Right now you are in lethal range from Thunder Road, so padding your life total a little bit, so if your opponent does draw into a, ready for anything to enable their Thunder Road, you don't just implode immediately. Or you aren't forced to, have some answer to it. Here Herzi will have the ability to, play a Scramble the Scouts, around, Quench. Before draw. Yep. Upkeep, casting Scramble the Scouts or Tranquil Repose feels pretty reasonable. It looks like we're going to see a Tranquil Repose. Yeah. So, one other nice thing about this Tranquil Repose is it draws a card, which means you draw 2, bin 1. Oh man, that's... Study's Past is so good here, and so is Prismatic Cavern. I assume we're going to see an Unraveling bin. Yeah. So we're all set 9 cards in Graveyard. So on Herzi's next draw step, this Edge of the Water is going to come online, and Herzi's mana situation is going to go from good, we have 5 mana off 4 lands, to, kind of cracked, since all the spells are being discounted 1. The one term... that is true. Dr. Batman's been very good about waiting on upkeep this match. So Herzi is tapped out. You can force 9 damage through with your... I was going to say with your Ready for Anything into Thunder Road, but the truth is, you can't. You are missing the second black or green source, since you missed the Ragavan treasure. So this is wrong. Dr. Batman should still be tapping... Oh, I get it. No, you should still tap the Nebula, because you only want to use the Nebula for Thunder Road this turn if it's going to be augmented. So you should still tap the Nebula, because if you draw into another Nebula, you want to be able to then, like, actually play the Nebula and do the Thunder Road thing. So, small optimization question there. Lost Through Dreams, I think, is just, like, a turn too late. Doing that after the Scry is a big question. Yeah, that's fair. The comment from Herzi there is just saying choosing what you grow should be a thing you do before you get a bunch of additional information, but out of order sequencing is fine. I don't think we're going to see a judge call here, but I also think both players are a little bit frazzled. This match has run a little bit long. Dr. Batman choosing to then just miss the trigger is unfortunate. I think her additional point of whether you get the mana or not is huge. Wait, oh my god, the mana! I forgot Heartforged Savant could produce mana. Okay, we just completely missed the opportunity to do Thunder Road here. Missed the opportunity to do Thunder Road turns and turns ago. I made this card, by the way. I just forgot what my own card did. Oh man. And yeah, as I was saying, like, it is good to now have this Lost Through Dreams, but it feels just a little bit too late. Like, you are no longer going to be able to pinch Herzi on mana. Herzi now has the mana engine online, has a lot of lands in play. Like, your ability to kind of tempo Herzi out is probably done, which is kind of an unfortunate spot to be in. You know, Herzi has the ability to both cast Scramble the Scouts this turn as well as Unraveling. In Herzi's spot, I think you're probably meant to, again, do an upkeep Scramble the Scouts, and then maybe fight over it. I guess not once they've drawn off the clue, because now if you fight over it and they have the perfect draw off the top, you die. Yeah, Herzi's Prismatic Caverns looking mighty mirror gateable over there. I don't know. It's unfortunate because, you know, we do have this Heartforged Savant, like, we could be going off, quote unquote, but we've gone into the Herzi, like, kind of end game, as it were. You are starting to run your opponent out on cards, but unfortunately you don't know the fact that they have a Studies Past, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, so they can stand unassailable from Graveyard. Cursory Glance is nice, Lost Through Dreams is nice, but you need to work through so much before you get anything done, and they still have these Secrets of Core-like Court. Like, Herzi can, for 2 mana, I said Herzi had 4 mana, Herzi had 3 mana, Herzi has 4 mana, so yeah, you actually can't really meaningfully get blown out here if you do some Scramble the Scouts line. I don't think it's correct to cast Heartforged. Actually, it doesn't matter. So, what you're going to do is you're going to attack, you're going to hope that Herzi casts a Scramble the Scouts or something that you can Cursory Glance. You make mana off the Cursory Glance, and then you Thunder Road Herzi's face. And Herzi is casting a Scramble the Scouts without reprising, so you could almost push lethal here. You almost have lethal. Now, we are going to be we're going to be pumping our creatures rather than creating mana. I mean, to be fair, we are seeing... Okay, so counter draw, so damage will be prevented. These Unravelings are no longer being good as fogs because of how big the creatures are getting, so maybe that was Dr. Batman's plan. But I think missing the opportunity to potentially 9-ball our opponent with Thunder Road is sloppy. I assume Dr. Batman did not build this deck with the Crystallization as tokens in mind, is just playing this card kind of as like a Sprite Dragon on crack. But I think that's a misevaluation. So Herzi tops the Edge of the Water, draws 1 card, should be drawing 2 cards, but it's a You May. So maybe Herzi just knows the other card that's on top of the library and doesn't want to draw it yet. That doesn't seem entirely coherent to me, but sure enough. Ditch another Secrets of Core-like Court, play out a 2-mana Edge of the Water. You have the ability to uncounterably cast a Tranquil Repose, which that's good enough to, like, you know, survive another turn, and then afterwards you can uncounterably coalesce a stand unassailable, which is neat. I don't think you need to Studies Past here, but I haven't checked the mana. Maybe you can. Maybe it's free. Maybe that's what Herzi is doing right now. I do think I'd probably cast Edge of the Water here for 1 and a blue, and then your Tranquil Repose is just 1 green, so just Prismatic Cavern plus this island can cast Tranquil Repose plus Secrets. You can cycle in other secrets, like when you cycle the secrets, you draw 3 cards, discard 2. When you cast Tranquil Repose, you draw 3 cards, then discard 2, then draw another 3 cards, then discard 2, because of how the ability is worded separately. So you just now start tearing through your entire deck. If you hit any small luxuries, you start going up on cards very rapidly. I don't know if the window has entirely closed for Dr. Batman, but it definitely feels that way. The Secrets of Corelight Court in Graveyard are kind of just... Is Herzi not reprising his secrets onto this? What? Why is the card in your deck? Why is Batman thinking? You counter this, and you kill your opponent. Your opponent has now thrown the game towards you. There is no trap here that could reasonably be sprung. It's not even a question of like, oh, you need to do this convoluted Thunder Roads line. It's like, no, you just counter the spell. And it's like, not quite on-board lethal. I will say, if Dr. Batman makes 2+1 counters and misses on a white source, I will go ballistic. Okay, does make a treasure, is getting lethal. We are going to a game 3. Why are you making the second treasure? So this Secrets of Corelight Court draws 2 cards, or draws 3, discards 1. Yeah, you just missed. So this is just a punt. Really weird end to that game. Herzi still will get to do one more on the play, but I'm slightly baffled by the decisions that happen here. I also punted a match pretty badly the GP before last by forgetting I had a Secrets of Corelight Court in my graveyard, but that was a one-of. It was not a dedicated sideboard plan. We're going to draw the Fatigue card that we know is there. Fatigue card means that we have enabled Thunder Road if we had not, since we had not already. Super doesn't matter, but it is a thing we've done. The thing I don't know, so reasonably what is going on in Dr. Batman's hand right now is they're figuring out what the trap is. What do they need to play around? But the truth is, if you have the ability to just make your opponent dead, and the cards you have do not let you play around things, you just make them dead. Please, for the love of God. Okay, it doesn't matter. Oh my God. So, Dr. Batman missed another set of Heartforge Savant triggers. Produced mana in ways that meant they did not have the white mana for Thunder Road. They don't have any extra treasures, and they do not have counters. So Herzi is going to take 10 life, go down to 4, and they get to untap. And there are still these Thunder Roads looming. Like, Herzi still could well be dead here. But, Jesus Christ. Oh man, I am very sorry for both players. This is a rough spot. This is what happens, unfortunately, when you have to play an incredibly long match. Your brain gets drained. These are not mistakes either player would be making if they were fresh in the game. And these are mistakes that I, or you, dear listener, would easily be making in their spots. It's really, really easy to critique as a caster and to be like, oh, why didn't they play perfectly with all this perfect information? But the truth is, that's just not how Magic the Gathering works. And it's easier to make those calls and make those guesses when you are not in the game itself. Herzi choosing what to discard. I think for me, I probably discard Raw Hit here. You can stand unassailable, floating colorless, or you can, I think the move is probably going to involve Studies Past, recurring, oh, interesting. So, I see why Herzi is uncertain now. You need to, I mean, you probably assume your opponent doesn't have Thunder Road, because if they had Thunder Road, they simply would have killed you. So he's going to discard Raw Hit, as I said. You want to gain 7 life here for the stand unassailable. You then need to spend mana. So if you gain 7 life and your opponent has a Thunder Road, you survive it. If your opponent has a Thunder Road, hypothetically enabled by another Thunder Road, you do not survive that. But for that second thing, you can potentially, I don't know if you can play around it mana-wise. One of the things I'm trying to figure out here is, part of the bind that Herzi is in is that they are pinched on green mana. They are casting this X equals 4, which is a pretty powerful effect. But you have 1, 2, 3, or 4 blue mana available. You have a green mana available. So a fog, you can only cast 1 fog this turn, but you can cast a fog that you Secrets the Corelight Court onto so they can't counter it. And then you also can... Did Herzi play land this turn? Yes. I think maybe it was a misplay to play out the Anzin rather than pick up and play the Lush Oasis. Because all the different lines I'm coming to leave you dead to something. And the only line that I see that doesn't leave you dead to something is going to involve, like, Tranquil Repose, Secrets of the Coralite Court onto it. No, that's way too much mana. Because that ends up being blue-green 1, even after all the discounts. I mean, you don't need to do Tranquil Repose, I guess. You can do just doing Scramble the Scouts with the Reprise is blue-green. Then you have this, like, awkward floating Promethean Grotto that's not being spent on anything. Yeah, I don't know. There's also part of me that wonders if the winning line involved somehow coalescing one or more of the stand unassailable. Because then you have a blocker for one of these creatures, and you gain 7. It should be very difficult for Dr. Batman to lose this game from here. We did miss a Ragvan trigger last turn as well. It's also possible Herzi has something in mind that I am missing. It seems very likely, in fact, that that is the case. But what we do here is we cast Scramble the Scouts, Reprise. We have an Unraveling that we can also cast to counter one thing. But given that there's going to be a total of 4 Thunder Roads aimed at Herzi's face, that should kill Herzi. Okay. Heartboard triggers. We make some tokens, please. Okay. So take 2 damage. Whatever. It's not 3 because each Heartforge tracks its damage separately. So yeah, this is checkmate. Even if Herzi counters this Thunder Road, the second Thunder Road kills Herzi. So Dr. Batman is actually slow rolling a little bit here because there is no answer Herzi has off of blue-blue. So just casting the second Thunder Road speeds up our timeline. Again, players are burnt out. I don't think anyone is intentionally slow rolling, to be clear. Okay. This is egregious, however, because white, red, blue. No, you're kidding me. Oh my god. Dr. Batman mistapped mana again. Or, no, it didn't mistap mana. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. There was not a correct option to tap mana because of the missed Ragvan trigger / missed token. Because the first one had to be cast for Jeskai colors, and the second one is locked in. No? So, wait, if you cast it red, black. Yeah, no, okay. So, yes, Dr. Batman did not miss lethal. Jeez, that is a weird sequence. So, wait. No, we did miss lethal in the saddest way imaginable. If we played out the Sedate Tundra, we can tap red, white, green on the first Thunder Road. The second Thunder Road can be cast for red, white, green, red, white, and the missing treasure, black. We have lethal. So, mishap from one side, mishap from the other side, mishap from one side. Interesting to bin the stand unassailable. But you know your opponent's down to 1 card in hand. Huh. I wonder how quickly Herzi can get through the remaining cards in deck, because there's also it's hard to track everything. So, I think right now the Secrets of the Coralite Court thing is being resolved. Okay, so we're at 26. We're going to draw another 3 for turn. I can bin another 5. So we don't have the ability to turbo it out next turn, but we're damn near close. The slow roll score should be very funny here, but no. Drawing 2 small luxuries feels pretty good. Okay, so coalesce 1 stand unassailable, go up to 8 life. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you don't have quite enough to coalesce the second one, but in terms of follow-up to it, you're now at 8 life, you have a blocker, you can still cast Tranquil Response, Speak No Evil, and Unraveling on your opponent's turn, all of those. So you should be good to go. There should not be ways for your opponent to kill you at this point. Now, it's possible we will find ways, because, maybe there's some weird Fireweaver line that I'm blissfully unaware of. Cave of Pleonixia is cool in terms of blowing up a prismatic cavern, but feels a little too late at this point. That 6/4 also threatens to block and eat any of these creatures. Trade with most of these. So, yeah, we're going to see a concession here. All right. So that was Herzi winning 2-0. Very rough series. Congratulations to both players for getting through it. Congratulations to you, the audience, for also getting through it. This is That Damn Pipsqueak signing off.